I'm James Sykes, CEO, President, and Director of Baselode Energy Corp. We're a uranium exploration company focused in the Athabasca area of Northern Saskatchewan. Our thesis is looking for near surface, open pitable, basement hosted high-grade uranium deposits. And we think that our thesis has really come together as we made a discovery last year called the ACKIO discovery. And here to talk to you a little bit more about that.
James, a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for joining me on the call. Great introduction. For my benefit and perhaps for viewers, could you just give me a little bit of background to your experience and kind of your understanding? Because, you know, Baselode's at a really interesting point, and you've come in to take this kind of on, and, you know, you're really, you know, heart and soul of this company at the moment. So just kind of how you got
Thanks,
to the position.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Pleasure to meet you. A lot of heart and soul. That's all I can really say. I dug in hard right from day one and just strived to understand the geology behind the Athabasca Basin. So I started out in 2006 working Denison Mines. I saw drill core there that led to uranium discoveries that Denison now has, Phoenix and the Griffin deposits. I went to Hathor Exploration. They had the Rough Rider deposit at the time, so I got to see more mineralized core. I put together a 3D model for the project and led to 2 more discoveries. I joined on with NextGen Energy very early on and helped lead the team to probably one of the largest high-grade uranium discoveries in the world at Ero. So again, seeing more mineralization and being part of that discovery from exploration to discovery was basically sealed the deal for me. And that's, I kind of had an idea of what I knew I was doing. And it was around that time that I just developed this whole thesis that we don't need to explore the unconformity. There's a lot of mineralization that happens in the basement rocks. Let's look for those because they seem to be easier to mine. But if we can find them outside of the current Athabasca Basin margin, which we know was, or can assume reliably, that the Athabasca Basin was a lot larger back in its heyday when it was forming, then there should be more deposits hidden beneath glacial overburden in Saskatchewan that are near surface. And that's where Baselode comes along. Brought that thesis forward to the group, and we've been going forth ever since. So
16 years on Athabascan uranium geology.
Yep, with a little bit of rare earths thrown in the mix as well.
Excellent. And what was, you know, when you say you brought the thesis to Baselode, you know, am I right in thinking that essentially what you're saying is that the sediments of the Athabasca Basin that were flat lying were then deformed to give kind of edges to the basin. So there's kind of an erosional element to it, which has been kind of taken away, but the structure underneath continues laterally beyond where the kind of Athabasca sediments can be mapped at surface. Is that really what you're saying?
Kind of yes and no. So I use the Tarim Basin, which is forming in the Himalayas today, as an analogy to this. So when you consider that the basin formed during the Trans-Hudson orogeny, and even a larger, it was all part of a massive orogeny that was being built 2 billion years ago and older. And as the basin was forming, yeah, it formed like any good old mountainous basin does, and it has its topography and topology to it. And throughout time, that it all eroded, and what we see left is what remains, as you said, like this, as your V. However, if you look at a lot of basin topography, that V is usually the lower part. There's an upper part that is more flat-lying and horizontal that we can assume has been eroded.
Yeah.
So if you need that unconformity for basement hosted for deposits to be outside of the current Athabasca, you know, if this is current Athabasca and this is old, and we've eroded just down to about there, you're not that far off from where the traditional unconformity would have been.
Yeah.
Lots of opportunities there.
You were instrumental in Arrow, okay, and which is this extraordinary, rich and large deposit. Can you just talk to me about the kind of the mineralizing system? You know, what makes Arrow so special? Is it many pulses of mineralization? Is it a long-lived hydrothermal system with kind of which concentrated the uranium? You know, what are the specific features that make Arrow so great?
The trap. I think it's really the structural trap and just the plumbing system having concentrated everything into that area. You know, I believe that there's a dual component to uranium mineralization in the Athabasca, that you do need your sandstone to be a source of uranium, but I also think there's a basement source. And when you have those two combined and fluids migrating along these structures, once they hit that trap to precipitate out uranium, that's the golden zone. It's being able to find those. So with abundant structures that do occur into the basin, you can have a number of structures all parallel, but only one of them will have uranium mineralization to it. And that has to be the largest fluid funnel. And you start looking at structural dynamics within fault systems, within basins. You know, you can have a number of faults that push up fluids, which is not what you really want. You want the fluids to come down. So you have to find those structures where they're basically vacuums and just drop.
Oh, really?
Right in.
Really, it's downward fluid flow.
That's the idea behind it all. Yeah.
Wow.
It is complex. It's not as easy as that. When I was at Rough Rider, I was working on this, where I was looking at the pulses, because they are pulses. Yes, many pulses throughout millions, hundreds of millions of years, probably, that have produced these deposits. And at that Rough Rider, it was a great example where you could see these pulses going up. You can see these pulses going laterally. You can see these pulses going down. So it's an interconnectivity of fluid systems. But on the overall scale, the idea is that the Athabasca Basin fluids were essential to this, and so therefore fluids have to come down.
Could you pull up a map and show me your kind of your tenements and your just kind of where your target areas are relative to the kind of the architecture of the basin?
Yeah. 2 seconds here.
And when you say that the Athabasca sediment fluids need to be going downwards, surely you could have a buried basin, buried sediment with dewatering and fluids coming upwards. You don't necessarily need them to be coming from shallow to deep.
Correct. And there are a lot of papers about that too, where in a basin, especially work that has been done here in the Athabasca Basin, they have mapped fluids moving upwards, up the basin unconformity. That there's such a pressure, there's an increased pressure towards the middle of the basin that it drives most of the fluids that are at depth up towards the edges.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can see the map then, obviously?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Perfect. Yep. And so this is where our tenements are. There are projects. We've got Hook and Hook Southwest over here, right along the basin edge. Catharsis and Shadow are quite a ways off. Now, a lot of people think that they could be too far. But again, if you consider that the Athabasca Basin was a lot larger when it was formed, and we've got reason to believe that because I can't remember where exactly it is on this, but about 80 kilometers east of the basin, out in this area, there is another sedimentary basin called the Riley Subbasin. And it's believed that Riley Basin was a part of the Athabasca at the time. So now you've got 80 kilometers to connect the two. There's also good indications up in this area that the Athabasca Basin is still prevalent as a subbasin, or the boulders that were found up here are very close to their source. Other notable geologists and professors do believe that the Athabasca was also connected to the Thelon Basin at the time. So that makes a large super basin, and then what remains today are just the ultimate subbasin, the roots of all of these basins. So if you consider all of that and how large this whole super basin could have been, then it's really not a stretch of the imagination that either Shadow or Catharsis would have been covered by the basin as it is. This summer, we found something very encouraging on Catharsis. We had found a couple of boulders, and especially one of them that looked like it was very close to source from its glacial transport. It was probably a couple meters wide, very flat lying, and it was about this thin. Something like that, if that's carried, especially sandstone, if that's carried by basin. Oh, give me 1 second here. The sandstone, the boulder that we saw, was about a meter large and about this thick.
Yeah.
So it's a big pancake. If glaciers carry that, and especially if it's sandstone, and the sandstone was not silicified, you can see the clays inside, it almost looked desilicified to a degree. If glaciers carry that, that's going to crack, that's going to break, and it's going to be just tossed up and shattered into little pieces. But it was flat lying and just right there. So yes, that's exactly what we think too, that it was proximal. And if that's the case, then that means we could have sub-basin Athabasca sandstone on catharsis and just simply not visible because of the glacial overgrowths and all this and swamps in the area. Catharsis has a lot of hills and valleys. Obviously, the hills are very prominent, but we don't have a clue what's underneath those valleys.
Just for my benefit, I'm such a noob to the Athabascan kind of basin. It looked from that map as about kind of 30, 40 kilometers north-south and 50, 60 kilometers east-west.
Much larger than that. It's about 400 kilometers east-west and about 200 kilometers north-south.
I misread the coordinates then. I was probably in. So could you just pull that map up again, please? It's just the Athabasca sediment age is what? Are they also kind of a couple of billion years old or?
Yeah. The Athabasca is roughly 1.7 billion, so it is very old.
So those it's 200,000. So those are 100-kilometer clicks, not 10-kilometer clicks.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Well, goodness me, this I'm so used to England where the distances are small, and that's a truly Canadian scale there.
I think England can fit here, can't it?
Yeah, it probably can. Certainly can. Good. Okay. And is it fair to say that the thickness of the sediments in the center there, underneath the words Athabasca Basin, are much greater than they are at the fringes?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of different topography along the basin. So yes, in the middle, it's about 1.5 kilometers deep. Okay. The most gradual decline from the edge towards the middle is over here along the eastern boundary. Okay. Where, I can't give you a gradient, but when you come over to, I guess I can kind of give an example here. So if we look at McArthur River is about 500 meters beneath the surface. And if you come over here to Centennial, that's about 700 meters beneath the surface. So you can see the difference between the distances. So it's very steep incline here, and it's even up on the north end, and also to the west. It's supposed to be very steep up here as well.
And how much deformation has there? How much kind of structural deformation can you see in the past, 1.7 billion years, or has it been relatively quiet?
I guess as far as metamorphism, there is none. There might be a little bit in a sub-basin up around the Uranium City area, but as far as the sandstone themselves, they are not deformed by metamorphism. They are, however, as you say, they are structurally deformed. Now, the age of uranium mineralization is basically about 1.5 million years ago. So 200 million years of structural activity, at least between when the basin was originally formed and when the first uranium deposits were being formed as well. And then those structures have continued to be reactivated for hundreds of millions of years after that. Some of the uranium dates in the Athabasca are about 300 million years ago. So that's about 1.4 billion years of structural and fluid reactivation.
Wow. Thank you. I know we're not specifically talking about baselode, but thank you very much for talking me through this. It's really helpful for my general understanding about kind of mineralization in the Athabasca, uranium mineralization, and that long-lived, 1.4 billion years of uranium mineralization. That's just an extraordinary driver. You've got this extraordinary kind of source of energy and fluid and minerals right through. So while we've got this map up, can you just explain in kind of simple terms how much work has been done on the hooks, catharsis and shadow in terms of drilling and kind of stage of exploration, and what's going to be how your efforts are going to be divided looking forwards?
Shadow, we know of one drill hole back in the 70s that was done on the project. There's some outcrop mapping in the area and a couple of historic airborne surveys that were done. So basically not much. We have flown the project with an airborne MT survey, and we love the results. It screams that there is a lot of potential, structural potential, and that's first step. We'd like to follow that up with some gravity work, and then to help us refine our target. And then
sorry, ground gravity or airborne?
Airborne.
Helicopter borne. Okay.
Yeah, heliborne gravity. It worked for us at Hook, and we also flew that at Catharsis, and we see some similar targets at Hook, or target signals that we see at Hook down on Catharsis. Catharsis, if not mistaken, there's less than 10 drill holes. Actually, I think probably less than that. Well, Catharsis, again, one of these areas that's not really highly explored. On the eastern limb of the Catharsis project, there are a number of high-grade uranium occurrences that do occur up in this area. They're surface occurrences that were discovered in the 1970s and not really reworked since. So that is our intention to go out there. But again, as far as drilling goes, there's really nothing out there.
Yeah.
Hook, similar situation. I think there was 1 or 2 drill holes on Hook, far away from any target areas that we were looking at, and not much work done on that either. The thing with Hook, though, when we were going into it, was that Hook showed no, despite the amount of surveys that were done on the project historically, there were no EM potential on the project. So electromagnetism, looking for conductors, no conductors basically. And that's a staple in Athabasca exploration, because those structures are your predominant structural corridors in which uranium can be found. So that was kind of that's where we took Hook as being this, okay, well, we've got to look at the structure first and foremost. Let's ignore the conductors and let's do that. So we took a different geophysical approach to flying Hook. And as far as southwest Hook goes, there are no drill holes on that project either. So a lot of these were all very underexplored. And that kind of builds on the whole thesis that, sure, guys, we can find a ton of these Athabasca-style deposits, and there's probably a heck of a lot more of them going on. But if we consider that the basin was a lot larger down here, and everything is hidden beneath the glacial overburden, how many more deposits are we going to find out in these areas?
Yeah, really interesting. Could you just pop that off the screen, please?
Can I build on one thing here? Athabasca 2.0. Athabasca 2.0 is perfectly shown in this image. If you look at where all the mines are, so right here, just along the Unconformity, just less than 100 meters of sandstone coverage, or in the basement rocks. Same with Key Lake, Clough Lake. There's no sandstone; it's all basement rocks. Uranium City, it's all basement rocks. Look at everything that's been mined. They're all along the edges or in the basement rocks. Look at all the deposits that have been discovered. Now, there's a lot of them inside the basin. The only 2 that have ever gone forward inside the basin are Star Lake and McArthur River, because they are the monsters. Each of them at least 300 million pounds, each of them with the starting grades of over 20% U3O8. They're phenomenal. These are the unicorns of the industry. So that's Athabasca 2.0 was really built on that, saying, hey, look, these guys don't go into production. You know, anything with deep sandstone coverage is not going into production unless you've got the monster. Let's look for these. Let's look for these. These guys go into production. 60 million pounds up in this area, and that went into production.
Yeah.
Whereas you've got 100 million pounds out here. That's not going into production right now.
I was funny enough. I was talking to goodness who it was. I can't remember who, but I think it was Can Alaska who was saying that they didn't feel that. I said, "Is 50 million pounds enough to get you into production? You know, to move the needle?" And he said, "Actually, no. 100 million pounds is probably the minimum that's required." But I guess if you're that's getting into the unicorn territory that you were talking about, you know, the giant deposits. But if you're outside and you don't have that sandstone cover, then maybe 50 million pounds is potentially economic, depending on the geometry and the rest of it.
That's exactly.
Yeah. So by being outside, having that sandstone eroded, you're giving yourself a chance of being economic with a smaller resource.
Yeah.
You mentioned the MMT survey and the gravity survey. The MMT, does that picks up conductors and structure. What are you seeing in the gravity that the MMT doesn't give?
Well, we use them both as trying to pick out the same type of feature. Gravity I use specifically for clay alteration, because if you take a granite rock and you alter that to clay, well, your density is going to be a lot less. And that's all of these deposits have the exact same alteration envelopes. Some of them being tighter than the others, some of them being quite robust and quite large.
Yeah.
So that's where gravity comes in. But MT, EM, they basically do the same thing, but define a little bit more of the structural corridor of interest. And so when you go along there, and again, sometimes you're looking for these EM highs, these really conductive spots, because you've had a lot of graphite in the area that's just all bunched up together, and that's your most structural area. Sometimes you get EM lows because the graphite has been consumed. So you got to take one or the other, or sometimes there is no EM a feature of interest, but that's where we overlay the gravity with the EM and even magnetics as well.
I love a bit of magnetics. It really. And you mentioned basotil. No, you mentioned till sampling. Was it basotil sampling? But anyway, you've got to do the ground truthing to key in and calibrate your geophysical signatures. So can you just talk to me about how you operate under the cover of till? Forgive me. Did you say that you do basotil sampling with an auger, or are you?
No, we don't sample the till at all.
You don't. Okay.
We don't do any till sampling. We just rely on geophysics, because that shows us what's there. Whereas till, you got to find boulder streams. There's a whole bunch of other things. These things can be moved. They may not be directly over the source. So we figure that between myself and my colleague Cameron, we've got enough experience in the basin. We've worked on deposits. We've made discoveries, and we can use geophysics to our advantage and use it reliably. That what we see with those tells us where we want to be, exactly where we want to be. So, and
what's your till thickness?
Variable. Sometimes there is none. Sometimes it's a few meters. Sometimes it's 40 meters. Sometimes it's 80 meters. Depends where you drill.
Yeah. Okay. I've worked in Sweden with some pretty high till thicknesses, and it was just a pain in the butt.
No kidding. That's why we like ACKIO again. So the ACKIO discovery is really building up to be something that we do think is very special. It's got about 20 meters of till coverage. True thickness, 20, 25 meters, which is really not that much.
Can you show me a map of ACKIO, just so I can get my head around what you are targeting? And
sure.
Let's drill down into ACKIO in both senses of the word.
Let's find ACKIO. I guess we'll go back to a cross section. So this is the overall area.
Yeah.
This is a conductive anomaly that we're seeing in the background. I'm not showing gravity on this, but the gravity overlaps this as well. The conductive anomaly itself is about 1,500 meters long, 500 meters wide, so very encouraging. And just to show you, I guess this would be kind of the cross-section that we're seeing. So about 20 to 25 meters of till coverage, and we do have a little bit of sandstone. So we don't have the dreaded 100-meter thickness of sandstone. We've got a little bit that is beneficial to us, actually, because we're near surface with this. The unconformity, which is the important part, is near surface. Unconformity deposits are typically higher grade and larger tonnage. So everything's more concentrated at that unconformity than in basin rocks, typically, not all the time. So we think that having the sandstone here, where it is, and as shallow as it is, if we can find unconformity mineralization, we're going to be laughing all the way. It just opens the door wide open for making this an open pitable discovery.
But so your primary target is a structural target in this area, and if there's the unconformity over the top, you're saying that it has acted as a permeability barrier and has acted as a kind of a ponding mechanism to allow it reduces fluid flow through that structure to the point where there's enrichment in and around the structure and potentially underneath the unconformity itself.
Yeah, You have to remember how uranium deposits form. Even roll front deposits, they all basically form the same way, that it's a redox. It's your reduced fluids meet your oxidized fluids, or vice versa, your oxidized fluids meet your reduced fluids, and that effect precipitates out uranium. It's, you know, it's batteries. The same way batteries work, how you go from reduced to oxidized, and when you recharge, oxidized to reduced, or vice versa. But it's all the same principles.
So it's a chemical reaction rather than a pressure or a temperature reaction.
Yeah, total chemical, even electrochemical, if you want to go that far. So when you consider the basement rocks, you know, everything in this area here all has the same, let's say, electrochemical potential, just for simplicity. These rocks down here would have a little bit different, but the most drastic electrochemical potential of all of these rock types occurs right here, right between the basement rocks and the sandstone. That's the best point. That's the best place for redox reactions.
So you do get redox reactions in the fault, because there's the different chemistry to the fluids. Because there's a mixing of fluids in the fault. But actually, if you include it with the sediments as well, then it just kind of I don't know, buffers the chemistry perhaps, or kind of gives another element to that that redox front. Yeah. Okay. So what are we looking at downhole here? So are those the elevated radioactivity, is that based on counts per second, or is that from a Geiger counter, or
This cross section right here is based on counts per second. So radioactivity as measured by a handheld CPS, or handheld scintillometer, sorry. And our main zone, which is right here, I can go up to the next image and just show the actual U3O8 grades. But just before we leave this, what we do see are these units up here, which are these hematite chlorite breccias. Now, what I've seen on other deposits, when you start to see these type of rocks, they are the fluid pathways for uranium. I've seen these on firsthand. I've seen them on 3 other deposits.
Right.
So as soon as we saw those, we were very excited that we were close to something. We've got our little graphitic. So there is a graphitic layer in ACKIO as well. And again, that's the same thing with EM conductors. You're looking for the graphite, just the structure, whether the graphite followed the structure the graphite was formed because of the structure, that's debatable. But regardless, the presence of graphite also creates a highly reduced environment. So when you get these oxidized fluids migrating down from sandstone and hitting this layer, that's where you get that electrochemical potential. And then we've got some other rock types, calc-silicates, and then our granite, which we consider to be our stop rock, let's call it. That's where we figure there should be no mineralization beyond this point. But yeah, I've been surprised in the past many times. So quite a bit going on. This whole area, though, we've got about 200 to 300 meters of pure alteration. And it's this massive plumbing system.
And the structures which kind of act as the fluid pathways can be in any orientation relative to that cross section, is it? Or are we looking perpendicular to kind of a predominant? We're looking at the best angle for the cross section, but possibly not the best angle for the structure.
Exactly, correct. And to be very honest, we're not entirely sure which way the structure goes yet. We're only 4 holes in on a cross section, so we haven't gone north or south of there to start piecing things together in more of a three-dimensional approach, which will help us define the structures. We've got an idea. We've got a very good idea, but we just need a little bit more drilling to refirm our ideas.
And just for my information, you can see, I can see that there are 3 holes that have gone down from that one pad under AK 2101. Are those all in the same plane, or are they have they got different azimuths as well?
They've all got, so they're all oriented east-west. They're all oriented shooting towards 270 west. And they all dip. So we've got a -85. We have a -60 and then a -45.
Okay, but they're all heading 270 west.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
We drilled our fourth hole out here, assuming that the sandstone would have intersected near the edge of the overburden. So we're trying to intersect it as shallow as possible. But apparently it took a much steeper dip than what we thought. So we still hit a favorable area of mineralization and just kind of builds on that. But it gives us an idea of where we can expect sandstone now.
Okay, great. And what's your next step now?
Well, next step is to find more of this guy. It's 1.29% weight percent U3O8 over half a meter, visible uranium. That's the beauty. That's what Athabasca is known for. This stuff's gold.
My uranium mineralogy is rubbish. Is that uraninite or is that?
Yeah. And again, that's as with any other commodity in the world. It's always about mineralogy. Uraninite is by far the best mineral for uranium production. So having uraninite makes everything nice and simple. That's what all the mills are geared up for here in Saskatchewan. It's not carnotites or anything like that. It's all in uraninite. What are our next steps? So on this cross section here, so these are the actual the drill assay results. You can see us zoomed in the upper zone. So we do have a lot of sniffs all the way down, which is very encouraging for potential. Any potential along these other structures, very encouraging. However, it's this upper zone that we're very excited about, very interested. Between these drill holes, this is a 45-meter wide zone. Doesn't look like, but that's 45 meters, and that's already starting to build up some pretty good widths.
And remind me, 0.24% is 2,400 ppm.
Yes. Yep. And we're only 90 to 125 meters beneath the surface. So from up here down to here. So still shallow. Two of the drill holes, these two hit high-grade uranium. We can step out here 25 meters or 50 meters, and we think that we still have a lot of potential for mineralization continuing up this way. We've got this hole way out here, and this is about a 150 meter step out.
Yeah,
we can easily come right back up in here and drill two more holes, go boom, one in there, and test the uranium potential that way. If we were to have kind of, well, when we plot up uranium at lower values, so I use a 10 ppm uranium. I use a 10 ppm uranium as a standard for exploring in basement hosted uranium systems. So if we were to plot up that 10 ppm on that drill hole that had no mineralization, you'd see that there's actually a nice anomaly in that area that we think is the tail end of that system. So we do think that plopping a couple holes within there, we can discover more uranium. And the grades, the thickness was continuing that way, the grades were continuing that way. So it kind of makes sense that there will be more. Are we going to drill those right off the bat? We will be drilling them this winter. That is one of the ideas. But we also want to step further to the east of all these drill holes. So we've got our drill holes basically like this. We want to come back a little bit further because we've only tested the west side of this anomaly. We haven't tested the east side of the anomaly as well. So there could be two subparallel conductors or structures that are hosting uranium mineralization. But then we've also got our fence. So if you assume west is this way and east is this way, this is our fence of drilling that we've done. We're going to march to the, or did I say east? So we've got to march to the north, and we're going to march to the west or south. And about 50 meter spacing, we'll do some more fences, and then we'll do another step out and do some more fences.
When you talk about the anomaly, you're talking about the kind of that EM anomaly, the conductivity anomaly that you showed in the first one, which we had a strike length of 1,500 meters on it. So could you just take me back to that original slide that you showed me with the EM anomaly? Okay, so there you go. So you're on the western edge of that anomaly, and so you want to put in some holes to to drill out the eastern side. Will those be? Are you going to orientate? Are you going to go across like that, or are you going to take from the same pad and go out like that?
No, because we feel that the geology is all dipping in the same area, regardless of what side you're on. This is not representing a fold.
Okay. So you keep just going to step across that way, and then you're going to do how many holes on that step to the east?
Probably, well, at least two, most four.
Yeah. Okay, 2 to 4.
If we like what we're seeing out here, and that might consider us to step back even further and try that. But we're going to step back 100 meters from the original collar, which would be about out to here. And we'll test that. If we, like I said, even if we're seeing massive alteration similar to what we saw in the vertical hole at that first collar, then when we've got reason to step back even further, then we can do another 100-meter step out and go underneath that.
And so the geology is dipping to the east-northeast.
Yes.
And you said there was a hole which was quite distal, which had a 10 ppm signature to it. Is that GEM 004 or is that a different one?
Nope, that is AK-2102. Yeah. So this one is basically vertical.
Okay. And so you're going to step out to the east and you're going to step out north and south.
Correct. Yep. We're going to keep going up here, keep going up here, keep going up here until we get close to the project boundary. So the anomaly is split between 2 companies, Baselode, and to the north is 92E. And then we will continue south as well.
Okay. And what's the timing roughly on this drilling program? So you've got a winter program going on at the moment, and you're going to get all of that drilling done before the spring thaw.
Yep. We kind of planned ahead. We know what the last 2 winters have been like here in Saskatchewan. They've been early spring thaws, mid-March basically. So when I first started out in exploration out here, you could go till end of April on the ground, no problem. You wouldn't rut the ground. You didn't have to worry about spring thaw or anything like that. So, but the way things have been going recently, spring thaw has been coming month and a half early, and checking with the National Oceanographic Institute, they're calling for another early spring thaw. So anywhere between mid-February to mid-March, we kind of figure, well, if we want to do this on the ground, it's not going to happen. We have to go airborne. And even just going airborne, that's been our approach almost from day one. It adds a little bit of cost, but in the long run, you have no potential for rutting the ground. You don't have to clear trails or anything like that. You're leaving everything up and it's all nice and pristine. So you have whatever little impact you have is with your camp and with your drill collars. So having the helicopter support that we do right now, we can continue this well beyond the spring thaw because we won't be rutting the ground. Yeah, fantastic. So
fly in, fly out, the heli rigs can drop them in and drop them out. Well, with the early thaws, there's an argument that perhaps the world needs a little bit more low carbon energy.
Preaching to the choir, my friend.
Really? Are you a fan? Are you a fan of the nuclear industry?
I've been a fan since I even got into exploration. Yeah, nuclear energy is the only way forward. It's the only path forward. I know people, they're alarmed by it, and everyone quotes Chernobyl and Fukushima. So that's 2 accidents out of how many?
Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started.
I know.
The 2 of us, I bet we could go.
Yeah.
We could talk about this for an awfully long time. Great. So I'm getting a much better understanding of ACKIO and what you're doing. Thank you. I really get that. What else are you doing? So just again, to help me with repetitions, you are doing the geophysics on shadow and on catharsis. And will there be drilling at shadow and catharsis in this, or indeed within the wider Hook area in the coming months?
Let's give you the full-blown plans for 2022 then. So this winter is 100% focused on 10,000 meter drill program, 2 drills, helicopter supported out at ACKIO. That's all we're going to do. Between June and March, we do plan to have some additional geophysics done. Actually, we were supposed to have a VTEM survey that would have been completed last summer. Ran into a lot of technical issues. This is on catharsis, but that VTEM survey should be coming back online in February this month. So we'll continue the VTEM survey over catharsis, trying to pick up some of these conductors and give us some more targets that way. Going between the ACKIO drilling and June this year, we're hoping to have some additional airborne gravity surveys done on Hook Southwest, and we're hoping that we can get shadow flown, but shadow is a little bit of we're still in consultation with that. We've got all the regulatory, all the provincial permits to explore the project. We simply don't have the social license to operate on that project, and that's what we're working for. As soon as we can get that and have everything resolved there, then we would fly the project with an airborne gravity survey. We also want to follow.
So just on that social license, is that a just a time thing, or has there been an incident? Is it process, or is it something to kind of that needs working out?
It's something that basically needs working out just with the First Nations in the area. They feel that we were too close to the community and that we would affect their caribou and their traditional rights up in the area. So we kind of got, we have a little bit of a standstill. No, not even standstill. Yeah. Just we're kind of on hold for the project until
just let things settle down and just talk it through. And okay,
we've tried to show the community that our approach to exploration is very minimal, and the community would never know that we're in the area, which we're still working towards that. So we'll see how that goes. After that, though, so still continuing with geophysics, we are planning to fly a high-resolution radiometric survey over Catharsis, over the east end of Catharsis, where we have high-grade rare earths as well as high-grade uranium. So we want to, and all at surface. So we're hopefully be able to pick those up, and maybe any boulders or any potential trends in that area as well. That will give us guidelines for getting people out on the ground and prospecting things that way. And then we've also got a MT survey, so another airborne MT survey planned for the east side of Catharsis, and as well the east and south ends of Catharsis, as well as up at Hook and Hook Southwest. But we're curious because, again, MT surveys were flown in the past. They have not shown any, or EM surveys were flown over Hook in the past. They've never shown any conductive signatures, but you have to realize that EM is vastly different from MT. I like MT. I love the whole idea behind it. I've used it successfully on many projects. And I think that what we can learn from the MT survey will help with our targets that we have defined by magnetics and gravity already. Getting into the summertime, we want to be a little bit more aggressive, especially on ACKIO, looking at about 30,000 meters. So that would give us 40,000 meters by the end of the season. The reason why we're just saying 40,000 meters is because that would give us 100 drill holes. And we figure that 100 drill holes, if the mineralization is there, if we love what we're seeing, can we get to a resource with 100 drill holes? I firmly believe that we can. I think it's quite possible, and it would be a reliable resource estimate so that we can start working towards an ACKIO resource by the end of the year. Especially with the way uranium's taken off, it makes sense to have a value that people in the market, that analysts can attribute to the company. So that's great. ACKIO is being pushed hard that way. Again, a lot of it hinges on what we find with 10,000 meters. Do we add more? Do we take away some? That all depends on this winter's success. But we've also got targets that we really want to see drilled on the Hook project as a whole. So we've got about a 2,500 meter to 5,000 meter drill program planned for Hook, which will be independent of ACKIO. So you can consider three drills on the entire project in itself. And then Catharsis as well. We planned to drill there last year, just unfortunately the way timing and everything worked out and success at ACKIO, we had to push Catharsis off. But we've got a number of targets that we want to see drilled on Catharsis based on the original gravity and with the VTEM survey that we'll have completed that will define our targets for us. And another 2,500 meters to 5,000 meters planned on Catharsis, with ground exploration focusing on the eastern side of the project, really trying to find strike length and any continuity of high-grade rare earths, high-grade uranium.
James, thank you. I've got a much clearer picture now. So potentially 50,000 meters, if everything goes well this year, kind of it's the 5,000 meters each, up to 5,000 meters on Hook and Catharsis, and potentially up to 40,000 meters on ACKIO, with the geophysics kind of interspersed and interwoven with all of that. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best and all the good luck with your exploration. And I look forward to getting you back on to explain or telling us about what you found. And again, thank you very much for your patience with a noob to the Athabasca Basin and the introduction to the kind of the broader uranium mineralizing systems.
Well, it's been a pleasure. You're a geologist, so geologists can learn geology very quickly.
Yeah, good.
After 10,000 meters, I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Merlin. Take care.